Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to New Brit Workshop. A little while ago I showed a prototype of a bench-mounted vice that I thought might be an idea for some people to make. But it had a number of flaws, not least of which is the fact that these two screw threads are actually very difficult to get hold of. So I've looked at a different design, and this time I've taken some very easy to get hold of components. These are some clamps which are sold by Axminster Tools and Machinery, and the rest of it is just mainly 3 pieces of wood. Now I believe that even a novice woodworker could make one of these in under 2 hours. There's just one joint, and that's between this piece of MDF here and this rear piece which forms the face at the rear here. There are 2 slots to cut, one here and one on the other side, so that it can be mounted in slightly different positions on different benches. And then on this side, there are a couple of extra little bits of wood which get added to hold the clamp element in place. And those are really simple to do. Now you see this part, there are some little slots which one has to cut to allow these pieces to go through. This piece you see at the top here, this piece of mahogany, that was added on later because I made my prototype, this piece, prototype, just a fraction too narrow, so I wanted to make it a little bit wider there. And that fits into the other piece where there are 2 slots for these parts of the clamps, and then you just slide these parts on, like so, set them to whatever, and clamp them up like that. This is designed to fit on the MFT3, but I'm not showing it on the MFT3 at the moment because this is a more stable platform. Anyway, let me show you how I went about making it. Now at this stage I don't know whether it's going to work or not, but the introduction would have told you. Anyway, I've cut my wood to size, and this is very simple, just 3 pieces of wood, a piece of MDF at the bottom, and the 2 pieces which are for the faces of the vice. Now, these are different sizes. I'll put all that on the screen for you. Now, one of the problems I had with this previous prototype was these 2 vice screws that I've used. And those aren't readily available. So it seemed to me that this was almost a failure before it started. So I thought, right, there's got to be a simpler way. And so I saw these clamps in Axminster not so long ago, and they're a familiar sort of style which many people have seen elsewhere. But what made these different was the fact that you could knock out this keeper at the end here, and therefore you can end up with this end coming off, which allows me then to feed this piece through into a vice mechanism, then reinstall this piece like so, and away we go. Also, this part here was previously protected by a little piece of plastic. I've removed that because I want to investigate if I can use a magnet to keep this piece permanently attached to the rear of the rear face. Now, removing this little stud at the end, this little keeper, is fairly straightforward. I've positioned it on the bench here. Now, bear in mind when I hit here, this is going to go flying that way, so I'm going to stop that from happening now. So I've put this other clamp here, and that actually should stop that flying up and hitting the camera or whatever. So here goes. There it goes. That's out. And I'm going to keep that safe just in case this vice doesn't work, and I can reinstate that at a later stage. Now my 3 pieces of wood are as follows. There's a piece of MDF which I'm using as a backing board, and this has been used for lots of other things in the past, and that will sit here. And then there's the rear face. Now, the thickness of this piece of wood is 28 millimeters, and I've done that deliberately, so when it's against the MDF part of the MFT3, it's actually deliberately about 0.5 millimeter proud of the aluminium down below, which allows pieces of wood to be in the vice going downwards here and not interfering with the MFT3 itself. And then the final piece is the front piece, which will go on like so. Now, these parts have to pass through here, and if you can imagine, it's going to be something like this, and this part then sits here just above the surface of this MDF. I say just above because then that allows the passage of this piece here. So I've now got to mark up for the holes which will allow the two clamping elements like this to go through. Now I've marked these quite accurately on this rear face. Now you've probably seen me use this technique before of having a piece of board fixed onto the table here. The table's got to be clamped in position, which is, the table's firmly locked in position, so that's not going anywhere. And I've set this up such that this is the top, and remember the two tops are the same, and now I'm able to drill a 7mm hole just in the right place here and there, and that will define the topmost part of the cut. I can then do the same thing with the other piece of wood, the piece which is the front face. And I've adjusted this now so I can do the second cut. So that's those done. All I've got to do now is clean these up with a chisel. Well, my first effort seems not too bad. These pieces have to pass through here freely, so I need to just loosen these up a fraction. And where they go into this block, this is the front block, I need to just take out a little bit to allow for this curved part of the steel here. Right, I think that's close enough for government work with those. Now, in order to keep these upright, as it were, I've cut some pieces of this oak here, and that's 7.5mm thick. It's fairly arbitrary how wide this is here. I think by the looks of it, it's probably about 50mm. Yeah, it's 49, in fact. And it's only to hold these pieces in place. And then once I've glued these pieces on, I could then screw on a final sort of clamping piece over here, which will stop these coming out. But because it's screwed on, I can remove it and therefore remove these if required. Well, those pieces are glued in place, and I'm going to leave that for about half an hour to let that glue go off enough so I can then do the next stage. And I've now put a backing piece on here. It's only screwed, remember, not glued. Right, so there we have it. And there I've got that piece now, which is the main base of the vise, and this is where the screw threads would go to secure it to the top of the bench. And this cutter is raised to just over the halfway point, so that means in each cut the cutter's not coming through, and that makes that cutting process just a little bit safer. I'm joining the baseboard to the rear face using 3 dominoes. They're 6x40s. Now, when you're putting dominoes into MDF, there is a risk that you can split the MDF. And the reason for that is, mostly the reason for that is you get this hydraulic locking. You need to be aware of that. Don't put too much glue in those holes. Now, in order to minimize the likelihood of splitting, not only do you put less glue in the hole, but you introduce the dominoes very slowly. If I'd tried to wing this all the way in right at the very beginning, that glue would cause a complete seal, and the glue itself would have this hydraulic locking action, which would just split the wood. Now, this is now absolutely square. So I'm going to leave that overnight. Very important to leave it for a good length of time, because this is an important joint between here and here. Right, it's not quite finished, but I've been able to mount it on the MFT3 here, and it's secured with a pair of knobs here, and below them is a Veritas small path dog acting as a huge nut underneath, and that's keeping that really firm. I've slid on the two parts of the clamps that go like so, and I can now give a very quick demonstration. Now, one would just squeeze this up, then move the clamp forward and clamp it in place. Move that forward, clamp it in place, and that's held absolutely rock solid. In fact, you know, it's the bench that's moving, not this. So that seems to do a pretty good job. There is an issue, and that is that you can probably see these parts of the clamp mechanism stick up above this surface here. Now, I didn't take that into account when I did this prototype design. However, I will amend my drawing so that this is built up a little bit higher. And what I'm going to do now, so that this one becomes usable, is I've got two pieces of wood. This is one of them, and the other one is here. I'm going to plant those on top, which raises the top of this surface, so that when this is tightened up, like so, that this clamp mechanism is no longer at risk of being hit by a plane or whatever. Right, the vise is finished now. I've made that adjustment to the height of these pieces, and all I've got to do is now reassemble it. That goes in simply like so, and these go on like so. And now if I want to plane, say, this piece of wood, I'd pop it in there, move those into position, like so, and that's that held now, and I can plane away. Now, of course, the MFT3 is not the world's most stable bench, as I found when I made this other prototype. So let's put it on something just a little bit firmer. Just do up the retaining mechanism there. That's that. Now I can put my piece of wood back in. Now, this does have an issue with racking, but frankly I don't think it matters as long as it's holding the piece of wood there. This is a narrow piece of wood, and if I were to now release this and put this way, then I've got a different sort of racking issue. But even so, it's still holding that piece of wood pretty jolly tight. And there we go, it works. Now, the plans for this are available free of charge. All I need from you is your email address so that I can send them to you. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.